my wireless connection did.
If it was for a game jam, I don't know. Are we back? I think we're back.
Are we back on?
Yeah.
I can't tell.
Someone in chat, if you're not hearing us.
It says live again. Let me click on it. I don't know what happened. I just got disconnected from the wireless. It looks like we're back up. Cool. Sorry about that.
Cool.
It looks like my wife is going out for a run. You going out for a run, darling? Oh, okay. She's going to get a kid from school. Never mind.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I think we're back up. Unfortunately, that blew out my entire chat. Oh, and it kicked it off as a new stream.
Chat is disabled. We got chat on my end. I mean, you're gonna bring that back up, right?
Yeah, give me just a moment. I'm trying to figure out what I've done. Apparently, my internet breaks and everything dies.
I should have hosted this. I got Google Fiber. Maybe next time.
No, what happened? Sorry, everybody. Where is I have too many tabs open. I can't find it. There it is, live. So this one, for some reason, it switched to the wrong stream again. I'm going to switch it over to the correct one.
I live in Atlanta, and in my area, in a city, we have Google Fiber in a couple of places. What's funny is that I actually specifically sought out apartment buildings with fiber. I told my wife, like, hey, listen, we recently moved from Miami, Florida. So I was like, I want to find a place with fiber. So we in Zillow, we searched Google Fiber.
Yep. That's funny because when I moved, I did something similar. I mean, I didn't go to Google Fiber specifically, but I was requiring that we could at least get like 500 megabits, nothing lower than that. So we kind of ruled out a couple areas that were not able to do that, and ended up with 500 up and down. It's kind of it was actually a downgrade, but
500 is not bad though.
Yeah, it wasn't too terrible. I need to rename my stream because apparently it all broke.
Okay. I see some questions here that say, while Jason is fixing his stream, can you share your opinion on additive scene loading for different game elements, like UI pages? If you tried it, did the benefits outweigh the design heck? You got any thoughts on that, Jason? Or are you kind of?
I just fixed my stream thing, so I think I should be good, and I can pay attention to what you asked me. Now, what'd you say?
sorry about that. Someone was asking, can you share your opinion on additive scene loading for different game elements, like specific UI pages?
Do it. If you have a big scene, a big game, do it for sure. Split the UI into a separate scene. Split the maybe multiple things in the big scene. So if you have and thanks everybody for rejoining. Sorry, my Wi-Fi totally dropped off. If you can hit like again, that'd be good because the old stream's gonna die away, and then this one will replace it. Anyway, yeah, definitely do additive loading though. So like if you have a big level and you're sharing it with a lot of people too, like you have artists and visual effects people and game designers and stuff working on it, splitting that into a separate level per job type or like per discipline can go a long way. It can really help. Like, you know, your artists can go in there and make the little changes they need. Your terrain guy can go in and make the terrain changes. Your particle guy can go in and make particle changes. Or if you just need to change, maybe you're the guy that does all of those things, but there's other people on the team. You can at least split out when you're working on those things and not worry about merges so much. And for UIs, it's definitely the case because it's a whole lot easier to manage a UI in a scene than it is in a single prefab, especially now with the new prefab system. Have you tried opening a giant prefab in there yet?
I have not. What happens? It's garbage?
It's slow. So I was doing it with our UI for this one game where it's a very, very big UI. In a scene in the old mode, worked great. Like it could still go through, move things around, change it. Hopefully you guys can't hear me chewing my jelly bellies, but anyway. So that worked good. As soon as I open it up in the prefab editor, it just slows to a crawl. It's like making a change. I can select things and everything, but as soon as I want to move something or make a change, it's like just dead slow. So definitely do additive scene loading. So that's all. That's the point. I
Cool.
highly
No,
recommend it.
that was a good answer. I haven't really messed around too much with it, and now I definitely should. In fact, I opened up that talk Jason posted in my chat here that there's some GDC talk about the creators of Inside, how they used additive scene loading to basically load the whole game without any sort of stuttering.
Oh yeah, theirs was really good. It was one of the best talks I saw.
I gotta watch that one.
I actually got to
Another.
go talk to those guys after too. They had
Oh
like a little
yeah,
meeting time. I was like, I want to talk to you guys and learn more. I went in there and yeah, got a bunch of tips. It was really cool. They were really nice guys too.
that's cool.
Yep.
I had another question here. Where'd it go? My chat scrolled.
Oh, beard or die? Trimming his beard right now. That's so sad. Don't trim it too much.
Careful now. Don't trim it too much. Hey, your chat hasn't loaded for me. Let me refresh. All right, so someone I know used to work on big game companies. He realized that he was working too much and earning way less than everyone else from web/mobile. I guess mobile. What do you think about overwork in big companies, Jason? I think you might be able to answer that better than me. I work at a very small company.
Yeah. It varies dramatically. So, like, I know, like, crunching and games and people working crazy amounts is always a topic that comes up. But in my experience, there are some companies, like, I have friends who I talk to who are like, hey, everybody's crunching here, everybody's miserable, or most people are miserable, right? And they're crunching or crazy. That's at one game company. Like, there are multiple guys I know that are at one company. I'm not going to call them out that I've heard stories like that from. Building big AAA console games, right? Everybody else that I know that works in game development generally just kind of like loves their job. The ones that I know that work crazy amounts of hours in the past, there were two main reasons. Either it was because they were really into what they were doing and they just wanted to finish it. It was the kind of thing like a lot of time I'll be working on stuff and I just like I can't stop, right? I just want to keep going because it's fun. Like, yeah. I'm into it, I'm interested, and I have like an investment in it, and that can definitely lead to you working crazy hours, right? Like, I've had plenty of times where I worked like 80 plus hours on something just because not because anybody was driving me externally, just because I get that excitement about it, right?
Yeah.
The other cases are when people try to make long-term estimates for stuff and they have hard deadlines. That's the only time I've seen people really kind of get forced into a crunching scenario where they had to work more than a regular 40 hours a week. And it's like, we have this release coming up. It's been scheduled for a year. We have these features in it. And somebody scheduled out this amount of time for a feature that was going to take 5 times that amount of time. And nobody called it out until way too late. And then those people are sitting there crunching on it, trying to get it done because their alternative is we fail to deliver for our big release, right? Which is bad for everybody. So they feel the investment there, and management's obviously just pushing them. But in general, that's not the case. Like, if you're working at smaller places, I haven't seen that really be much of an issue. Most of the time, game developers are really well paid as long as they're programmers and they're not like in their first, probably 2 to 3 years. Excuse me. After that, I think it's relatively easy to get good pay. And I've mentioned it before, but I've known plenty of game programmers who were in the $200,000 to $300,000 range, in Southern California at least, just as experienced senior programmers. They're not, you're not going in at a junior level. And then when you hit like a junior level, the range is going to vary anywhere from like 30 to 80 or 90,000 to start, just depending on what type of job it is, what type of company it is, how much money they have, and how many people are just begging them to work there. Because that's the reason that some jobs or salaries get really low, is because if you look at like any big game out there, like any of the top games, they put out a position, they're going to have thousands of applicants because lots and lots of people want to work on the game. And some of them are going to be really good and not care about the money, right? Just because there's so many of them. As soon as you're applying for anything that's not like those big jobs, that number drops dramatically. Like, there are, thousands of people that want to work on Call of Duty. There are, maybe a dozen people that want to work on the Bambi game. Not that you have to go work on something that you don't like, but don't expect good pay and super giant AAA job as a starting thing, right? Like you get to high rates at those places, but that takes quite a while, like anything else.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that you get paid less unless you're willing to take less. There are just people that are willing to take less to get started. And I kind of did that really to start off. I mean, I started off at like 50,000, I think, something like that, for my first game programming job. But I actually took a job before that at 30,000 doing testing, right? So it's like 30,000 a year just doing testing and writing test tools. It's like my first actual game job. And I was like, it's a pay cut. It sucks, but I really want to work on games. And I had a lot of fun. And to be honest, like for those 3 weeks before I got laid off, I did work a lot more than 40 hours. Right? I was working like 80, 90 hours a week because I was really into it. I'm like, I have access to this database. I have all this stuff. Like I can see game code. Like it's the coolest thing ever. So that was one of the cases where I forced myself into it. Of course, that helped because then when the layoffs came, I got rehired instead of being laid off because my 3 weeks I was completely obsessed.
Nice.
Okay, I got a ton more questions too. I don't know if you had a bunch more pop up. I just looked for question marks.
Now you go for it. I'm gonna scroll up and see if I find any. But
somebody want to know how they can paste flat ads into VR. I don't know that you. I mean, you can put up like a quad and drop them on there. I don't know that they'll have too much value. I've known a lot of people trying to do ads in VR. I think there are a couple companies that have kind of grown in it, but I think that I don't know if any of them are big enough to make it worthwhile. And some of them probably are, but I don't know enough about it now. Can you give some insight into actually testing behaviors? I want designers to tweak private serialized variables in the inspector, but it's not trivial to unit test. Same for hot reloading. That's a good question.
I've thought about that too, because fundamentally, you expose a private field in the editor, and it's true. How do you test that? And I don't know. I feel like the answer I've landed on is just use the humble object pattern and just try to encapsulate some of that business logic in a class that has a constructor where you can yes, Jason says, trick question. You don't test mono behaviors. You test your services. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of along the same line. You push that logic somewhere, a service or another class, where you can pass in the values on a constructor.
Most of the time. So yeah, I'd say that's what I do most of the time too, is try not to test mono behaviors. There are cases where I'll write tests for mono behaviors now that it doesn't suck to do. I don't know if you've tried it yet, but they changed the whole workflow for it sometime.
When did they change it? How recently?
I don't know. It was sometime in 2018, I think. But they changed it from like the old pattern where you had to go set up a whole scene and create all those objects and all that crap. Now you just write an IE enumerator test.
Oh yeah, play mode test. Yeah. I've used. Yeah, I have a video on that.
They're much simpler than the last time I had tried them. When I remember, I was amazed by it. It was like a year ago when I discovered that they had changed it. But yeah, I write tests for some things, some stuff that I think might break. And for those cases, like where it's a private field, a lot of the time what I'll have on there is the data is either on another object for the thing. It's not necessarily on the prefab. Or if it's on the prefab and in that mono behavior, there's probably, I'll usually have a public property that can be read. And then, I just use that to use the property that reads it. Yeah. But if I'm just testing against private stuff, I don't know. I guess I'd need a bit more details on the example. But I do definitely test my mono behaviors at least a bit. Just not often because a lot of times they need a whole lot of setup. So I'd only test the things that I can't test without it. But try to get as much stuff out of mono behaviors or to the point where you can mock in the mono behaviors and have all your other service code, like Jason was kind of mentioning, do that.
Yep.
So we got another question. When I try to follow a single responsibility pattern, I end up having 10 components on one game object. However, I like the modularity of it. Should I be worried or no? I would say no. I think it depends on, if you end up with 10 components on all of your game objects, there might be an issue. But if it's, some game objects end up having a lot of them, like your player or your more advanced ones that seems fine. Your simpler objects, like if you got a ball that bounces around, probably shouldn't have 10 scripts on it, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Well, I will say is that I do feel that, and I'm going to have a hard time articulating this because this is something that I've just been kind of mulling around in my head. Is that the single responsibility principle kind of gets a little bit abused in that you'll have like these micro classes all over the place. Um, single responsibility isn't like literally one thing, like, hey, this class just changes this one string and that's all it can ever do. I think single responsibility is like, if you think of a responsibility, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like one
Like
class.
update the hotbar.
Yeah, right. Like
It's more than one thing.
let's say your class is responsible for updating the UI, keeping it always updated. The UI could consist of many things, right? So, what are you going to do? This class updates only the health bar. This class only updates the mana bar. This class only updates the avatar. At some point, you have to say, what's the responsibility here? The responsibility is I just need someone to manage the UI as a whole. And so, that's where I think the single responsibility principle kind of gets abused, and it does become a problem.
So yeah, and here I got another example I can think of. So with one of the games I'm working on, we have just like an auto attack where your guy just keeps attacking. You can toggle it on, toggle it off, and they'll attack. It's like World of Warcraft, right? And a split like that functionality of auto attacking into a separate class. So it's responsible for turning auto attack on, doing the attacking, and turning it off, and basically anything that's very tightly related to the process of auto attacking, and that's it. So it's not like it just does the one thing of sending an attack and there's something else that tells it to do that. It kind of handles that little subset. Or I'll have like one class that handles stats. It's got dictionaries of all the stats, and that's all it handles. It doesn't do anything else, but you can add a stat, remove a stat, modify a stat, right? Like it's not just a single thing, but it's not a bunch of things either. Yeah. So I don't know if that helps.
I've always struggled to really understand the idea of the class has only one reason to change. And that might sound crazy, but like I think of my UI example, and maybe I'm wrong with my UI example. Jason's like, I have so much to say on this topic.
I think your UI example might be too broad because you might split that
broad.
into smaller subsets of UI. Like you might have a health and mana section and a abilities section or a weapons section or something.
Right.
And you may split those into separate responsibilities, just depending on the scale of your UI, right?
Yes.
Like if you picture the UI as only the things that you said, then it totally makes sense. It's just the 3 or 4 bars. If you picture it as a giant thing with a million other things, it might not.
Yeah. So maybe you have a class that just manages your bars.
Yeah.
And then you can say, hey, what's the one reason it would change? Well, the underlying thing that renders bars changed.
Yeah, so or the amount for your pools changed, and it's firing off. It's listening to your pools and updating your UI based on pool changes type stuff, right? Like your mana pool or your health pool or whatever changed. And let's see. Oh, Jason mentioned a question or a post about or a thing about when you change job companies, jobs or companies, your salary will go up too. There's also a super chat in here I didn't read. Let me see that. It just popped up.
I saw you got a super chat. I got to turn on my super chat just in case anyone wanted to.
Oh, in case anyone wants to hit it. I thought it was on automatically. I don't know if I had to do anything to turn it on.
Actually, I don't know if it is or not.
I think just having monetization enabled on the channel turns it on. But Sean said, if I want to expose a variable in the editor, but I also want other scripts to access it, should I make it public or make it serialized field and make an accessor for it? Definitely private serialized field with a get accessor for it, and I just use the expression body property version of it so that it's nice and short so that you don't end up with having to write as much text. So you just do like a public type, the public property name with the Pascal case, and then the equals greater than, and then the private variable name after that. So it's just like it writes it down to a nice smaller amount, but definitely do it that way. The reason for that, anybody that's watching, is so that you don't accidentally misuse that thing. So when you do it like that, it's going to be read only from outside the editor so that your code doesn't have the ability to set it. And obviously you're thinking like, well, if I'm not supposed to set it, I just won't set it in my code. And that works fine like the first day, the first time you do it. But when you go back and start interacting with your code later, or when anybody else on your project is interacting with your code, if you don't want that thing to be set, they're not necessarily going to know it. Like if you make it public, there's a good chance that somebody's going to type it. They're going to hit the dot. They're going to see that thing, and they're going to think, oh, I can just change this value, and not know that when they're changing that value, they're actually changing maybe a prefab value, or they're changing something that's not supposed to change. I've got a post up that shows how you can actually screw up your prefabs by exposing those and using the code wrong accidentally. So it's. How do you feel about this stuff, Charles?
I agree with what Jason put in the chat, and that's the only time you should ever have a public property is in a DTO, a data transfer object. I just think that you want to hide as much as your implementation as possible, and if you create a data transfer object, some object that's really meant to be consumed, and that's its job, in that case, you're saying, hey, look, I'm exposing these variables to you here. You can change them. That people who have access, developers have access to a public variable, you're opening them up to change it. And with a DTO, it's like you can change it. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to affect the rest of the system. What is an example of a DTO? I guess like one example that pops to mind would be like if you have an event that other classes subscribe to, one of the arguments of that event or parameters of that event could be a DTO. That's just a class that just stores.
Even the event args are almost like a DTO.
Yeah.
Right. It's just an object that stores data and no code, right? Usually it's public fields, not even properties. At least on a lot of them, and they're marked as serializable a lot. And I use these for like passing data around through an app too. So like one of the cases I can think of is I got like ability targeting data where I figure out maybe I got this boss that's going to hit 40 guys with stuff, and they're all going to get hit slightly differently by stuff because they do different damage amounts and they're different, resistances and stuff like that. Some people don't get rooted, some do. And put all that data into a struct, which is a DTO, and then that gets used and passed around. And then we'll have other ones to pass messages back and forth to the clients when we're doing multiplayer networking stuff. So
yeah, that would be an example, definitely. And that's how I feel about it. If you have public variables, fields, whatever, you're just opening up that class, its internal state, to be affected by some external, system, and you just don't want to open yourself up to that.
Hey, somebody asked what a good rate for a full stack senior Unity developer is in your opinion.
Full stack. How many years?
So I assume that means like you are able to build a game from start to finish, ship it, and you're a developer on the team, and you maybe need a little help every now and then, but able to do most of the project yourself. What would you say a rate for that would be?
Let me go to Glassdoor, because that's how I figured out my own rate. Let's see, Unity. I guess what would that be, like a senior Unity developer? That'd probably be like a team lead. Dev. Not team lead. Team lead would be too high, right? Senior Unity. Glassdoor doesn't even know what this is. It's like, I don't know what a Unity developer is. God, I don't know. 6 figures, maybe close to 6 figures at least.
In California, I would say definitely you should be at a 6-figure price point, maybe 100,000 or more. Like as a starting point, but it depends a lot. The chat is real time. Somebody asked that, but I think it depends dramatically on where you are. Like I talk to developers who live in other states in the U.S. and the pay rates are half what they are in parts of California. And then you go up to Silicon Valley and they're double again. So I think like as a senior developer though, at least in the United States, minimum like 80 if you're like in a place where the cost of living is low, and if you're in a more expensive place, you should be making 100,000 plus pretty easily, I think, as a senior dev.
Hey, what's up, Josh?
And if that's like hourly contract stuff, a lot of senior developers I know generally charge $100 or more an hour for contract work. Sometimes it'd be lower if it's like a longer term project, and some obviously charge dramatically higher, 2 to 5 times that. But on average, I think you can find a good developer for, anywhere between $50 to $100 an hour in the U.S. at least. And yeah, it's dramatically cheaper in other areas too. Just cost of living's high. Sean had another question too. I know both you guys use Writer, but ReSharper is available for Visual Studio, which is better. I used ReSharper a lot and decided I just liked Writer better. I like ReSharper for general programming stuff in Visual Studio, but in Unity, I just felt like Writer was just dramatically better. It was easier to use. It integrated better, and just it didn't seem to compare. So I made the switch, and really I had to force myself to switch. So anybody who's considering using Writer, like, just grab the trial when you're not doing something too vital, and force yourself to use it for a couple weeks, because it takes a little while to get used to it. Once you get used to it, though, you see that it just really speeds up your coding. Like, it makes me a faster and better coder. And I love Visual Studio too. Like, I see Jason down there talking about it, but it's just Writer is just so much better for Unity specifically. I still use Visual Studio for non-Unity stuff though. Not that I do a whole lot of it, but I do some outside tools and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I would say use ReSharper if you're in a situation where, like for me, I'm developing Xamarin applications for my day job. So you can't really do that in Writer. They don't have the support for it yet. So I'm kind of forced back into Visual Studio. And in that situation, I depend on ReSharper. Other situations would be like, if you ever develop an installer using Windows, it's called Wix, Wix. There's no support for that in Writer. There's very poor, well, it's getting better, but there's still kind of poor support for WinForms applications in Writer. So, in that case, yeah, you would use ReSharper in Visual Studio.
You would rewrite your app, get rid of WinForms.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because it died a decade ago.
I'm actually developing an application right now using WinForms, and it's actually not as bad as I remembered.
Oh, really? Why WinForms, not WPF or Xamarin?
Just because I needed something quick, and I at the time I didn't know Xamarin.
Fair enough.
I wasn't.
Yeah. You remembered it. WinForms. If you're building something simple, I'll give you that. WinForms is very very easy way to throw something together. I've banned my 11-year-old from using it though, and forced him to at least use WPF if he wants to do that, or ideally something that's super cross-platform. Just because I'm trying to get him. I like that the cat's butt is right in focus.
Oh, sorry. Get out of here, guy.
That's perfect.
I think he's hungry. What time is it?
About 1 o'clock on the West Coast.
I got 3:50, so yeah, it's closing in on dinner time for these little guys. Get out of here.
Let me see. I got a couple more questions I can hit real quick. So you said, should I always use addressables? I'd say no. You shouldn't always use them. Definitely start looking at them and look for opportunities where they make sense in your project, though. Have you used addressables yet, Charles?
When they first came, there was like some blog posts about them recently. I read about it and I was like, this looks cool, but it looked very complicated. Like most of Unity's new features, it's just like so much work and so many weird settings and windows that are all over the place. So I was like, if I ever need to use this, I'll learn it. But right now, I just don't see the need.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I mean, I want to do a video on it. I want to do a video on it, and that's kind of why I started like really reading about it, because I was like, I don't really have a need for. I like at a high level, I understand why I would use them, but I didn't have a need for it. So I was like, let me just learn this so I can make a video about it, because I think that would be valuable. And then I started reading it. I was like, oh my god, maybe I'll wait. Maybe I'll wait for this to get a little more mature.
Yeah, it's not too bad now. From what I've seen, and it makes a lot of sense for projects where you need to load in a lot of data and manage the memory. You need to load and unload data, or if you want to have downloadable data, downloadable packages. It's like an easy way.
And you can
like
update them better, right?
What's that?
Isn't there like a way like you can update them like if you, I don't know, I don't have a better example than this, but like if like a Halloween update, you could change your textures to be like Halloween textures.
Yeah, exactly. You can do basically all the stuff asset bundles used to do, but it makes it easy. It's essentially a layer on top. Oh, thank you, Alan, too. And thanks, Sean, for the other chats above. I don't think I remember to say thank you. But yeah, I wouldn't use them for everything, but definitely look into them, and there may be cases where they make a lot of sense. Let's see. There were more and more questions.
Look at my cat's butt.
Oh, okay. Oh, somebody was asking about events between systems and whether they should stick to primitives for the event payload to avoid dependencies between systems. No, I wouldn't. I would use some shared class type. I mean, use primitives when it makes sense, but I really like to use named objects and classes that make it more obvious what's going on if there's a reason for a data structure. So if there's a reason for a shared data structure, I'd use it. Otherwise, maybe use the primitives, but don't use primitives just to avoid sharing the
There's
structure.
a code smell called primitive obsession, and it's just basically that, like, you just use primitives for everything. And no, I think you got classes to your disposal. You know, we just talked about DTOs. Use them. You know, you can take 3 or 4 primitives, give them some names, and stick them in a class that has a well named class, and now you've provided a readable, you know, documentation that's baked into your source code.
Yep.
So yeah.
Exactly why it's important. You want to be able to know what those things are. You don't have to go look through the code every time and see what the int is. What is int parameter 3? You know.
Yeah.
So somebody also, Ian mentioned that he didn't agree with the serialized private because public exposed that the dev can tweak the variable in the inspector. I find it the opposite. So I find that if it's private and serialized field, I know immediately that that field is only intended to be done in the editor and nothing else. And there's really no ambiguity about it. Like, I don't have to guess. I don't have to wonder, like, is this supposed to be used this way or not? It kind of like forces it because that's really the only way that you can use it. So, I mean, that's kind of why I like that pattern, because it makes it very obvious how you use it, and it prevents you from accidentally misusing it, which is, again, the mistake. I made the mistake. I accidentally misused things multiple times, and that's kind of why I got into that pattern. Let's see, we got more questions. As a generalist with 12 plus years of web development background and an interest in programming, as well as modeling, animation, and game design, what career path is needed most at the moment? What to focus on? Programming. I mean, if you're already a programmer, I would go into the programming side of it. Learning art is, I mean, it's a lifetime skill, right? Like, being a good artist isn't a thing that you just, you know, do as a side thing or just learn. Like, you're gonna have to really invest time and really be interested in it, and probably have a bit of innate skill. Same for animation or game design. And game design is one of the things I find people underestimate how hard it is all the time. Like, because it seems everybody's designed a game before in their head or on paper, so everybody
Yeah.
feels like they know how to do it. But when you actually work with really good game designers, you see a giant difference, and you realize those deficiencies. But until you do that, you really have no idea how much different it is. Like a professional game designer versus, you know, a programmer who wants to design games like me. What do you think, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, I want to answer the question as, you know, what do you want to do? I think, like, you know, you're seem to be a generalist, and I try to look at myself as a generalist as well, in that you know, you kind of have to be if you're going to get into game development at all. And I guess either learn, if you want to finish a game, if your whole goal is, hey, I want to be a solo developer, and I want to finish my own game because I have a great idea. Yeah, I guess probably programming is a good way to go, because, you know, I guess you could always purchase assets and art assets to kind of get you to the end.
It's easier to hire artists too than to hire programmers, right? Because
Yeah,
you get those isolated packages.
yeah. So that I guess programming would be the way to go. But, you know, the question also is that even feasible? Is that a feasible path? You know, and maybe that's not for me to say, but maybe you're thinking, hey, I just want a lucrative career where I can do something that I like, and you know, and I can make money and live my life, and I don't want to make my own game. Well, then maybe if you like art more, you should focus on being an artist and just go down that path and get a job as an artist and create assets for a studio. or maybe create assets and put them out on one of these many stores, these creative stores like the Unity Asset Store, and make money that way. Yeah, it just really depends.
Yeah, I'm looking at his chat more. I get the he said he's trying to build up a portfolio too and doesn't really know what to focus on. I would focus on the programming and gameplay, but get decent art and keep the art simple. So don't try to get like super, like try to build, if you're putting stuff together for your portfolio, build some things that use very basic stuff in an interesting way and make it kind of cool. Don't try to compete necessarily on the visual fidelity side, like get polished, lots of polish, but don't try to go like, AAA visuals, because it's going to be really hard to compete with, anything big, and even show that stuff until you've got a lot of experience with it. Let's see. Somebody asked if this will be available later. Yep. And somebody's asking Jason Story some questions. Great.
What game does Charles play on his phone? I'm going to pull it up.
Oh.
My favorite game to play on my phone. Ready? And this is the only game that I play on my phone. Is this one right here. It's probably a delay. So it's a Tuber Simulator. I love this game. PewDiePie's game. Tuber Simulator.
Interesting.
I love this game. And if you play, look it up on my name's in Infallible Code. So look me up and friend me.
Tuber Simulator. I'm writing.
I play this game every single day. It's ridiculous. I've always thought to myself, who puts money into these games? And I have spent so much money on this game. It's stupid.
I've done that.
Irrelevant.
Before.
What's that?
Yes, I've done that before.
Yeah.
Dumped a bunch of money into a little mobile game and then realized I needed to uninstall it. Like, this needs to go.
Yeah, I've spent like definitely over $100 on this game.
It's too funny.
It's fun. It's fun game. It's like I can't be a successful YouTuber, but I can be I sure as well can be a successful tuber.
All right. See, do we have anything else? Somebody, thank you, Clappy. He just said it was great info about the developers under $25 an hour. That's low, but I mean I could see it in other countries. And I mean somebody mentioned up above that in Brazil getting 50 as a senior was high, and I just, without knowing the cost of living though, I mean it sounds really low. Like you couldn't afford an apartment here, but I assume that it varies. It's so weird how different the cost of living is just from city to city and country to country. And how weird it, like, I mean, it has a kind of a maybe possible good side that you can, work in another country remotely that makes a lot more money, but I don't know how hard that is to do. It seems like it would be difficult, but could be very profitable. I mean, I know people who are U.S. citizens who like go and move to places that are very cheap to live in and still make, $100,000 or more a year doing their job remotely.
Right.
Or one of my buddies that moved to the middle of the country into, a farm out in the middle of nowhere. Cost of living is dirt cheap. House was dirt cheap. And he still makes, a lot of money. They're like, yeah, you really don't have to worry about anything anymore because you can just pay for everything cash.
The trick is getting a good enough internet connection out in the boonies.
Yeah, and he did the same thing you did and required gigabit. That was a requirement for their location.
Smart move. Smart move. Hey, I work remotely and I love it. I mean, I started working remotely about 5 months ago, and let me tell you, I feel like I can never go back.
You feel dramatically more productive?
I've always been sort of a self-starter. So for me, I have no issue working and being self-disciplined. So maybe some people, it's not their forte. I will say I could see that being.
Well, and it takes some time to get used to too for some people. Some people will start and really struggle to get things done. But when you're doing game stuff, it's a little bit easier because again, you have that self-drive and passion about the project, right? You're going to get excited about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to get excited that you added a new tank to a game than you added, an about page to this website.
Well, and I think that's also something to mention as well. Like if you're going to work remotely, you have to consider that you're going to do things that you don't want to do, and you can't just not do it because you're sitting at home.
Yep.
Jason says, actually, Charles, one thing worth bringing up. I see a lot of questions about making money and migrating to games. I, from experience, actually suggest not just diving into it, but if you join communities and help out and learn on the weekends, you can start contracting with devs who need help. Yeah. And migrate organically into it. And I think that's good advice for people worried about money supplementing a main salary with contract rates. Our contract rates are a great way to start to feel confident enough to move into it full time. And I think that's a good, that's a good
Definitely
idea.
try doing some contract jobs if you can first. And it builds up that the portfolio and resume, so it gets easier to get in on the positions too. You say like, yes, I built this. I built it by myself usually, because most contract stuff is really really small. Yeah, it's a good way to go. Jason, have you ever made anything with 3D software? If you mean like art wise, I have, but none of it has been anything other than terrible or placeholder stuff. I might make it and make the shape and then say, hey, artist that doesn't suck, make this into something cool, and then it comes back looking totally different. Let's see. What was the next one? I often find myself using humble object pattern due to testing, so making it usable or unit testable, I guess. But I get weird MVC quirks when I need to access the interface. Then I do an interface provider, which returns the object solutions. I'm not sure I understand the problem enough. Does that make sense to you?
Sorry, I'm trying to find it in your chat.
It was two below Sean's green chat.
I often find myself using that one, humble object
Yeah,
pattern.
I'm not sure I understand it enough to give a clear answer.
MVC quickers when I need to access the interface.
Oh, and he may have been asking the other Jason, because the other Jason actually replied right after that he uses Maya. If that was for him, yeah. He's probably much better at it than I am. Oh, and Jason Story understands the problem. See, we should have had him on here.
Yeah, right. Well, I think he's doing great in the chat there.
Yeah.
He's really holding it down. You'd love to move out to the Midwest, the flyover states?
Yeah, I couldn't, just because, like, I mean, it's weird. Like, I feel like a dumbass saying it, but, like, I feel like I live in the country and it's super rural outside, because if you go, like, a mile that way, there's not city. It's, like, just hills and stuff. But I'm still, an hour from downtown LA. So I still feel like I'm, like, way out in the country. But, yeah. If I went much further, I don't think I could handle it.
I need a city. I mean, me and my wife, we do everything. I mean, she works in marketing, so she's always like finding all these things going on, and we're always going out to events and stuff. So I couldn't live in the Midwest.
Yeah, same. I need good weather and lots of entertainment, and of course, like the most important thing for me is just having good schools. Like safe area with good schools for the kids. Like when we searched for this place that we're in now, it was all schools and internet. Those are like the two disqualifiers. School had to be good, internet had to be good. Location didn't matter other than that, because where I work is wherever the hell I am.
Yeah.
Sean asked a question if we're familiar with the scandal with Suraj Raval caught plagiarizing an academic paper. I am not.
I'm only familiar with it because Jabril's posted about it on Twitter, and I was like, "What is this?" And I've never even heard of Suraj. His channel looks like he's got cool content, but yeah, I mean, from what I know about it, it's kind of crappy that I guess he did some plagiarizing, and he came out, admitted it, and he took down the video. So I don't know. I mean, from someone who doesn't really know what happened, it looks like he made a mistake and he owned up to it. And I don't think I don't know. I'm not really sure how, to the extent of his plagiarism, if it was a little piece, if it was the whole thing, or if that even matters.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder. I'm curious. I have to check that out.
I don't want to say too much on it if it's some sort of controversial thing that I don't really know anything about, but I don't know. It seemed, from what I saw, it seemed like he owned up to it, and that really sucks that he did that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when my buddy John did. He released a course that was created by somebody else. They like white labeled it.
Oh wow!
And then he found out. So he released it, and like a couple days after it's selling, They get contacted by somebody else who's like, yeah, you stole my course. Apparently the dude that contacted him to do this course, he's like, yeah, I made this course. I want to sell it with you and like do a white label thing. And it was his first time doing it. He's like, yeah. And he said, yeah, apparently that dude just went through and copied somebody else's course on Udemy word for word. Just went through, copied all the screencasts and just reset all the words.
Oh man,
and then gave it to him as I told him that he had made it from scratch, and it was a giant mess. I was blown away. Like, who thought that was gonna work?
I know, right?
Why would you?
It's the internet. Man. Come on.
I don't know if this is anything like that. I'm kind of curious though. I want to check it out and see, kind of learn more. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up though. That's kind of, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading. The one place where I actually found out about it was from Jabril's Twitter.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I mean, reading through what he said, it seems like he and I share the same sentiment. He says, I'm not down with the cancel culture. And I agree. I'm not down with the cancel culture. I don't know the extent of this guy's plagiarism. If it was the one post, and he became clean, it's rough. As someone who creates content, and I know, Jason, I'm sure you can relate to this. It's really tough to be on like a weekly schedule and you're creating content. I'm not saying that excuses plagiarism, but I've put out some pretty stupid content in the name of getting something out, And so maybe this guy was stressed, pressured, people were liking his stuff, and he's like, oh man, people expect me to get something out here. I'm just going to grab this piece of this, article that I read because I know it'll add a lot of value. I don't know the story.
Yeah. We'll have to look into it, and then we'll do a full report.
Yeah.
I'll find out more though. I'm really curious about it.
Yeah, I'm curious about it too. I'll check it out.
And James asked if we've released any solo projects on Google or iOS stores.
Nope, not me.
No, I haven't done any solo ones. I've done ones with companies before where I worked, and contract ones. I don't think any of them are still available on the store though. I think that the only stuff that's still up there is private things. And apps that are out of date and haven't been touched in years. We haven't done much mobile stuff in a while. But I don't know.
Yeah, sadly, all the projects I've ever worked on have just gone defunct.
Oh, yeah, mine, like, they're all over the place. Some of them I sold. My audio is cutting out. That's a problem. I wonder why. Is my audio cutting out for all of you? Is it just my audio? Now I'm curious. If you guys are hearing that, let me know. Oh, Jason says fine. I don't know. If there's problems, let me know though. Did you have any other questions on your side? I don't see more. There might be more, but I might have missed them. Somebody asked if they become a game dev and they make stuff on the side, is the company that they work at, do they have the rights to their stuff? I don't know how it is everywhere. I know that in the US, if you work on your stuff at the job or on their hardware, there's definitely a legal possibility that they can take your crap from you. So don't do that. Don't work on your employer's computers, their laptops, anything related to them. And I think you're fine in the US, but I mean, you really want to probably check like where you're at exactly, check the state or country and check the laws there. I really don't know. I know that in the US though, if you do stuff at work, they can come for your stuff, and I've heard of it happening, not often, but I have heard of it happening at least a couple times before in the news. Yeah, I wonder if the audio issue is just the streaming problem because it doesn't like the 4K. I don't know. I'll do 1080p next time.
Oh, you maniac.
I know. Come on, I didn't realize it was just the default because I use OBS to record, and it just defaults to 4K, so didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Until I saw the warning on the screen. Cool.
Someone said, I thought the Avengers Infinity War was the biggest crossover until I started watching this video. You both are inspirations to me. Oh, that's great. I love it. It's my favorite comment.
Which Avenger are you going to be, though? You got to show up in a costume next time.
Oh, I know. For real. Which one should I be? I'll be the Hulk.
I don't know.
No?
I was thinking Black Widow, maybe. Get you in the costume. It said you had to wear the costume, right?
I got to get spandex. I got some.
I'm
Don't
here,
worry.
guys.
Oh God!
Let me pull out the costume.
YouTuber banned from the platform after showing up on stream.
Be a
Jason was
great title.
saying, yeah, right. Jason says, this is probably another good point to mention about personal projects versus released games. It is a valuable lesson to learn that if you work in contracting, a lot of your projects are NDA and you have no ability to talk about them unless they're interviewed like you were, Jason. Oftentimes, a company likes to brand them and pretend they did them in-house. I've seen that before. Even if your project does get released, it is usually not something you can claim as your own. Yep, that's unfortunate. Life of a game developer that you rarely have a portfolio, and a lot of your the code you write gets thrown away in defunct projects. Game devs in general is usually a life of failed and forgotten projects. And I'd say that's probably true about any developer, enterprise or not. I mean, a lot of the code I've written for enterprise, in my, my day job, I mean, I can't really talk about it. I can't really show it to anyone. I've done some of the coolest things ever at my day job, as an enterprise developer, and I can't really share it with anyone, and half of the stuff I do, people wouldn't even really
Understand?
think it's cool. Yeah, they wouldn't understand. They wouldn't think it's cool. It's like, I write applications, premise-based enterprise applications, which means I have to get really fancy about how I replicate data across multiple regions in the U.S. So, and I've written some crazy code, but I can't really talk about it, and you probably wouldn't even think it was that cool. But the same applies to game development as well.
And the same with all my non-game stuff. Like, you make this really cool thing, and like, there's one nerd friend that you can talk to about it that's really into that pattern, and like, you can talk to them about that. That's about it. Nobody else knows what you're talking about. You can't show it to your kids. You can't show it to your friends because everybody's like, I don't know. You're just showing me a bunch of words I don't understand, right? It's like showing a page in Chinese to me. Like, there's a lot of stuff there, but I can't read it and don't understand it.
Yeah. And it's funny, I don't know if you felt this. I mean, you have more game development specific experience to talk about, but I almost get imposter syndrome when people, I've got 15,000 subscribers, whatever. That's pretty cool, and people watch my videos, and then you get a comment like, "So what have you done? Like, have you created any games?" And it's like, "No, not really. I haven't. Not that you would be able to see or know about."
Yeah. For me, it's Oh, sorry, I was looking at the chat. For me, it's like I get that if I'm not working on anything. I feel like, how am I going to teach stuff if I'm not doing it actively? Which is why I like to constantly be working on some sort of project, because it gives me new problems to solve and issues to run into, and just experience. Like, if there's a thing, I can try it out in a real world scenario and see, like, is there a real problem with it? But when I'm not doing that, it does feel strange, especially if you don't do it for a while. When I first started doing YouTube stuff, I wasn't doing a lot of games. I kind of stopped doing game stuff, released a bunch of things, and started doing YouTube stuff, and felt weird at first, and then getting back into doing a lot of projects helped a lot.
Yeah. I saw this question asked on your channel before. Have you guys ever made a game moddable, like enabling players to create mods? Is it difficult, worth the work? Do you have any thoughts on that one?
I haven't done it like as a whole process myself on a project. I've worked on projects that had moddable components. It's generally not too complicated, but it's not the easiest thing to start. It's like oh, excuse me. It's not the simplest thing to like get going with, but it's not the kind of thing that's going to take you months to do either. Like, once you know how to do it, it's somewhat straightforward. I was actually planning on doing a video on this sometime soon. I was talking to my kid about Unturned, and I'm going to go through a couple of their videos, see what their workflow looks like, and then put together a video on how you would replicate that maybe with their workflow, or if there are any issues with it, it can solve those, because I think it'd be kind of interesting. Let's see. Sorry. Anything else? Can you downsample your stream? I don't know. I think if I change the stream size or the setting, it's going to break everything. I could try it.
I got a good question here, or I guess a question. Do you guys have any tips for a serial prototyper? I've started countless prototypes that I've killed because I can find any number of reasons to not work on them. You got any thoughts on that?
I don't know. I had the same problem.
Well, you know what's funny? I saw the other day on Unity, on the Reddit, the Gamedev subreddit, someone posted a GIF that was like, "Oh, 30 of my prototypes in 1 minute," and it was like all these prototypes that he had made, you know, in a GIF, and I was like, "Damn, that is so cool! That is so impressive." And I'm like, I don't have any prototypes to really look at because I never even make my prototypes pretty enough to make it into a GIF.
You don't get them to the pretty part. Here,
Yeah.
let me show you. I'm gonna strip for you real quick.
Yeah, right. You're my prototype. Yeah, so it's like,
look at my shirt.
Oh, you're lagging in my stream.
Oh, am I? You see it? So I got the Bracky's unfinished project shirt on underneath.
Oh my god! Hold on, let me see this. Like, let me pull you up on Zoom because that's when I'll actually see you. Oh no, you turn your camera off. I'll watch the stream and you'll come up. That's awesome, man. I gotta get that shirt.
Yeah, it's too funny. I was like, yeah, unfinished projects, and it's like little cute.
Oh, I see it. I see it now. You finally came up. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of unfinished projects myself. I don't have really good advice other than part of the problem when you do it is just start things you think is a really good idea, and then the idea that it's a really good idea tends to fade, and you start to think that something else is a good idea. And I don't know if the answer is to like stick with the thing that you don't think is a great idea anymore, or if it's just to get things going. What I would try to do though is get them to a point where you can do like a little release. Like if you're prototyping and you're like, hey, this is going to take me 9 months to finish it. Think of like, is there a way I can finish this in a week or a couple of days? Is there a way I can wrap this up into something that I can release and get out there? Because if you do that, I think it'll at least help get past the I'm only prototyping and you're actually releasing stuff. But you start to get a lot of feedback on things, and I don't know if it'll really help or not, but that's what I would try to do at least.
I have some thoughts on that. I will say that if you think about a prototype, you know, the point of a prototype is to assess the feasibility of an idea, you know? And I think that sometimes you prototype something and like you prototype a whole game, the whole idea of a game, but how do you assess the feasibility of it? I mean, if you play it, sure, you know, you might be able to assess, this seems pretty fun to me, but you really need to get it out there, get it in front of other people. Maybe you're already doing this, but I think personally, I found that I'll do a prototype, you know, but I won't take it to its logical conclusion. And that logical conclusion is I have an idea. I've really quickly, with no game art, with no clean code, I've tossed this thing together and it's playable just enough. And I need to put this in front of people, 10, 20 people. I need to go on my Discord server and say, hey guys, can you guys check out my prototype? And then I need to take that feedback and say, here's what worked, here's what didn't, and then return to the drawing board and grow and progress on that. And I think that's part of what I see missing whenever I see people talk about prototypes. It's like the purpose of a prototype is to determine if the idea is feasible. And how do you do that if you just slam it together, press play once on it, and then move on to the next thing? You know, you need to determine, hey, this idea is feasible, or it is under these circumstances. And then now what's the next step? Now I need to put it into an actual project, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe that's an answer to your prototype problem. You just need to take your prototypes and do something with them, or else what's the point?
Very true. We had a couple more questions. Are there any YouTube channels to avoid that teach bad things in Unity on YouTube? I don't know of any specifically. I've seen a lot of older videos that teach not the best stuff. I don't know of any like specific channels though that have bad things.
Don't watch some of my older videos.
Yeah, fair enough.
When the videos where the first videos where I showed up on camera and I didn't know how close or far to put the camera from my face, or I didn't know anything about lighting, don't watch that guy. That guy's the worst.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody who does a necessarily bad job of it. I've seen that a lot of tutorials though just don't show or they'll take little shortcuts every now and then, and it's something that I think I used to do a lot too, and I try to avoid now, and just stop doing the shortcuts, because it does give people, a bad idea. Like if I make a field public so I can put it in the inspector, then like if they haven't seen all my other stuff and they don't know my argument for why that's not usually a good idea, I have to go in and explain it, or I'm showing them kind of a bad thing. So try not to do that anymore. But I think even in a lot of my old stuff, I probably did that way more than I should have. Oh wow, our stream is really delayed.
Yeah, it is. That's why when you're showing me your shirt, I was like, I cannot see.
I'm seeing that now. I think it's because it's set to 4K. I'll make sure. I'll fix it next time. I gotta set up my streaming thing. I didn't make it totally different.
No worries.
And then somebody asked too, do you have to be a young person in your 20s to land a job with no experience, or is it all based on your portfolio? And I don't know if you saw Jason's answers right below that, but
yeah,
I thought it was perfect. He said it's honestly more about who you know, which is very, very true. Like knowing people and having contacts or friends or anything in a company, easiest way to get in, like 10 times easier than anything else. In fact, almost every job I've taken came from a referral from a friend, right? And there's a good reason for it, because if somebody at the company is willing to vouch for you and that person, has some authority and trust, like it goes a lot longer than guessing based on your resume.
Yeah, every single job I've ever landed, my entire career has been because of someone I know.
Wow. That's been like 75% of mine probably. And it's just like the way I find them, right? I just find them from friends that recommend them. They're like, hey, we've got this opening. We've got this opportunity. Could you do it? Would you be interested? Or, hey, would you be interested in coming to leave and starting something with me, or whatever, and stuff like that. Or I'll just ask around, ask friends. Like one time a company went under. And I'm like, hey, company went under. Just kind of looking around, don't know what to do. And, talking to friends, and buddy goes, hey, interested in coming to work here with me? And got my name in through the door, and I ended up working at Qualcomm for a while, which is fun. It was cool. I definitely say I wouldn't have gotten through the process had it not been for his recommendation, only because they had hundreds of applicants for every job. Once I was in there, I saw the process, and I mean, it was an easy job. I was more than qualified for. It wasn't like I wouldn't have been able to do the job. In fact, I think like when I got there, I was tearing it up, just going through fixing, tons of bugs on day one, which was awesome. Just because it was easy. When I say it was easy, I mean, it was like easy win form stuff that like, it was, I could have done it when I was a junior level programmer for a lot of the stuff when I started. It obviously got more complex and got bigger tasks as things went through. But, I never would have got in the door just because of the number of applicants that they got. It was in the hundreds to thousands of applicants for every job opening.
Yeah.
But just knowing somebody there pushed me to the front, got the interview, and then from the interview, got the job.
Yeah, I mean, networking is one of those things where the payback won't be immediate. And for me personally, it took my wife really to show me the value of networking, because she is like the best at networking. She knows so many people. And for her, every little interaction, whether it be a comment on a Facebook post, and she's in marketing. She works in the marketing industry. So she'll frequent Facebook groups where marketing professionals talk. She'll leave a comment of advice, or she's always finding mixers for us to go to. Like I graduated from a university in Florida, so they had a little mixer. So it's like, oh, we're going to go to that. There's a professional mixer, at a bar somewhere nearby. We'll go to that. She's on forums. She's on chat rooms. Like any little, you don't know, but any little interaction is valuable. Even if you go to a party, with friends, and it has nothing to do with networking professionally, you might find someone who is positioned to help you and you can help them. That's one thing that I've learned over the past couple, maybe 10 years, I would say, that slowly but surely, as I see these relationships that I've built, come to fruition, and it's not about like I'm using people or people are using me, but it's like, hey, look, you meet someone, you kind of just tell them, oh yeah, I've got a YouTube channel, or oh yeah, I work in game development, or yeah, I graduated with this. You just never know when they might come back and hit you up on LinkedIn or hit you up on Facebook and say, hey, do you still work as a developer? And you can meet people that way. I saw where Benjamin in my chat was saying I live in the Midwest, so finding people locally isn't really easy. Um, and so I think that maybe that's an opportunity, Benjamin, to be a trailblazer. Maybe there are other developers that live in the Midwest in your area that feel the same way, and so maybe you can go on meetups and create a meetup and start your own user group locally. So
There
there's just,
definitely are.
yeah, there's just lots of opportunities to meet people that you may never even have thought of. And I think it's valuable to just know that getting yourself out there is the first step.
Yeah. And the online communities can help too. I mean, I've met a lot of people just online through our meetups and other stuff, and chatting that, I refer people jobs all the time that I've just met online. But mostly it's like Charles said, meetups. So I'd look at meetups in your area, see if you can start one, see if there isn't one, see if you can kick one off. You'd be surprised if maybe if you live in a small town where there's only a couple thousand people. But if you're near any major city, there should be a meetup there, or at least more than enough people to get one going, I would think. Just do like a monthly meetup, talk about random stuff. We just do weekly meetups online and talk about random stuff. And it's just a good way to meet people, talk to people, and get better at stuff and make those contacts. Do you have any more questions? Let's see. Do you know people with a job function similar to creative Unity developer, that they're writing code but sometimes creating 3D stuff or designing instead of always writing code? Yes. Those are generally programmers who are just good at art and design and working in smaller studios where they're doing kind of all-in-one type stuff. Very few. Most programmers are terrible artists. Most artists are terrible programmers. I know, like I said, I think 2 guys that are good at both. They're a good artist and programmer and can design a game and give me a beautiful design doc. I am not one of those. I'm a terrible, terrible artist and a pretty bad game designer, I would say. But yeah, they exist. It's just they tend to be very creative people who could do design and art already. That's just kind of the way that they think. They could easily do that, but they're also able to really grasp code as well. Normally, it's rare that you find the overlap, but sometimes it happens. And most of the time, coders are just they can manage the art on a technical level to a degree, but that's about it. It's rare that they're good.
Yeah. I like to use technology to make the art easy, using noise and stuff like that to generate textures, or, in Unity, you expose a place to set textures and then you just code something to place in the right place. Little utilities like that make the art side a little easier to deal with.
Yeah. That's where I think most coders are doing that.
Yeah. Although, when I was in high school, I thought I was going to be a graphic designer. That was my path. And I actually was the treasurer of my art club and was getting ready to go to the Art Institute. And then I just changed everything. I don't know why. I just was I don't know if this is for me. And I got scared. I was a little more timid back then. And I decided to just go in as undecided. And then eventually I discovered my love for programming and computer science.
I'm guessing you're a much better artist than I am then. Let me show you my art. I don't know if I've shown you this, sir.
Let's see it.
So we did some painting for Halloween, and we painted these 4 things here. So
I'm
one
delayed,
of them
but
was
I'm
done
sure
by me. One was not. This was my youngest kid's. It is pumpkin. Came out good. Makes sense. And this one was my daughter's. She's I'd say, only one in the family with lots of artistic skill. She's very, very much into it. She used to be really into it.
With 3 kids, you're bound to have one of them artistic.
Yeah. My daughter's boyfriend's. It came out fine. Looks good. He's a really good artist. I've seen a lot of his stuff. And then mine, I have no idea. I don't know why there's a V on the head. It was going to be a weird design. Oh,
man.
Yeah, so I was blown away by all the kids, as usual. I can follow the step-by-step stuff,
Yeah.
At Disneyland where they're like, draw a circle here. I can do that. As soon as it gets out of like following instructions, I'm, like a artist that's never coded before following a code tutorial. Like, I don't know what to do now. Like, I'll just put a V here.
Yeah, like I followed the whole donut tutorial. I don't know if you saw Blender Guru has like this modeling tutorial where you can create a donut, and I went through it and I was like, dang, this is awesome. Look at this donut. It looks so realistic. Like, now let me make something else. And it's just like I don't know what to make.
That's funny.
I tried to model one of my pipes and I just couldn't do it. I think I showed it to you last time we were on.
Terrible at all that stuff. I did have a lot of fun trying to design a pool though. That was fun.
A pool?
Yeah, just because I watched a pool show and then I saw them using this pool design software. And I was like, that looks neat. I wonder if I can find it. So I Googled it, found it, downloaded the trial, installed it, and just started screwing around, playing, designing crazy weird pools for fun. Just because I saw it on TV and I was like, that's neat. I was like, let me see if I can find this thing.
That's funny.
Cool.
I had a question here. What do you think about game design as a college course?
I don't know. I haven't seen. I've never seen anybody get hired as a game designer because they had taken a game design course. I'll put it that way. I don't know that it doesn't happen, but I haven't seen it myself.
Yeah, I had a friend who went to college for game design. That was his degree, and he changed it. So I don't think that bodes well. But I don't really have a lot of experience.
I struggle to see the financial value for it, right? Because I don't know of many it's not a thing that game companies are looking for in general. There might be some out there that are, but I don't know anybody who's like, do they have a game design degree? I've never ever had that question come up or heard that question come up. And when I talk to game designers who hire other designers, they don't care. Like that's not really what they're interested in. They want to know a lot about what games you play, what you understand about the games, how those mechanics work, how they tie together, how the content works. And they want you to be able to explain what makes the game fun and kind of come up with the ideas and create the things that are going to make the new games fun. So that's more of what I see. I just never seen anybody care about game design degree. I would go for a programming degree, or something else if you're going to do that, or just start literally. I think if you want to get into game development, you should just start trying to get jobs. Like just go out there and do it. Like you can find junior game developer jobs or junior game designer jobs without experience. They're just not going to pay very well, and you're going to be kind of going in at the bottom. And I think that happens for pretty much all game designers because there's not a way to be prepared, right? Like for programming, you can prepare for that. You can code your own games. It's very, very hard to be a designer that just goes out and designs games and has something that you can show to get a job. Yeah.
So someone in the chat said, meet singles, and he crossed it out. Developers in your area. That's funny. Yeah, I don't know. Networking seems to be the way to go.
It is.
Positioning yourself.
Meet people and get referrals. Talk to people. Be nice. Don't show up and be a dick. You can be quiet. That's fine. People understand. People are shy. But eventually talk and just don't say mean things. Say nice things. Don't trash talk other people or other companies while you're there. It's not going to help. Just learn, meet people, and talk. Talk about the things you like. You find out, like at meetups and stuff, everybody there likes the same stuff. So it's pretty easy to find things to bond on.
Yeah. I mean, it's really cheesy, but one of my favorite quotes is, luck is where preparation meets opportunity. So, how do you prepare? You just have to, do game jams, practice coding, take courses, make a million prototypes. And then how do you create opportunity? Well, you have to go on Discord servers. You have to go to meetups, go to conventions, put yourself out there. And eventually those two are going to meet, your preparation and it's going to be an opportunity, and someone's going to offer you a job or a contract. And like Jason said, maybe you don't go in, fully. Maybe you just take a couple contracts here and there and you work with other developers who need a helping hand. And from there, teams can blossom and your experience grows and you build up your LinkedIn or whatever it is you use to get yourself out there professionally. And yeah. organically you'll get there. It's not going to be like one day you're not a game developer and the next day you are a game developer. It's going to be a process for everyone.
Well, it can't be if so. The thing that Jason was saying, I think, applies if you already have a full-time job, right?
Okay,
Like you
fair
already
enough.
have a full-time job and you have financial restraints that mean that you can't go in there and take the game dev job that might be like super intro level where you're not, or you're making under 50,000 as a programmer, or 30,000 as a designer or whatever. So you want to make sure that, yeah, in those you just go for the damn job. Like just try to get in, try to work with people and learn. But if you're outside, yeah, definitely the contracts are the way to go. And Nick had asked about that question about the guy that does everything. Is there a specific name for it? Yeah, it's just senior programmer or lead programmer usually. It's usually one of those.
Yeah.
It's never going to be referred to as a different one, and most of that's just because pay. Like pay is going to be related to the position, and senior programmer is usually senior and lead programmer, like two of the highest paid positions on a game team usually. That's it. And then like producer, like the main producer might be higher or right around there, and just about everybody else is going to be getting paid less, at least from what I've seen at most game companies. And you might have like a chief creative person or like C-level people or leads, like an art lead, an art technical lead, or a design lead might be up there too. But in general, like just for normal non-lead positions, senior programmer is going to be where you want to be.
Terra Games asked, what games have you guys released or worked on? We talked about this earlier. We most of the games we've worked on are either defunct or we're under contract. So it's like, sadly,
at least most of the mobile stuff. I did work on that one, Vanguard, which is a lot of fun.
Oh, that's right.
And EverQuest 2, that was fun. And I'm working on Pantheon now, and a bunch of VR games that are up on Steam, but I don't own them anymore or have anything to do with them. But they were a lot of fun to build. I really had a blast. I made articles about them and blog posts and stuff. But I don't have anything on the stores that you can grab now either to check out. I wish I did.
Your
but I don't
experience is
have
so
any
much
good
cooler
ideas
than
for
mine.
mobile games. What's that?
Your experiences are so much cooler than mine.
Oh.
I've done a bunch of boring contract games, and the coolest one was for Disney. That's why I always bring it up. It's like people
sounds
know,
fun, man. Disney
people
stuff
know
seems
Disney.
interesting.
It wasn't that cool.
It's still fun.
It was fun. It was fun.
Cool. Well, how much longer did you want to go, Charles?
I don't know. I mean, I can go a little bit longer or not. I mean, my cats are hungry, so I should probably at some point get up and feed them. But we can cut it.
You can go go like another 5 minutes.
Go another 5 minutes. So it's not like
give people a chance, because I know we have a long delay on here. So next time I want to do this with ultra low and get the bit rate fixed so that it's nice and fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, my wife's come in here a couple times to say hello. So I don't know. Let's see if we had any other questions. Did you have anything else on your chat?
Let me check. Anything in the works at the moment? I mean, you mentioned Pantheon. Me, everything's ramping up. I work on enterprise applications for my day job, so recently that's why I haven't put a video out in a couple weeks. I've just been traveling for work, and hopefully that's all dying down soon. So I've got some personal projects I'd like to be working on, and I'd like to make videos on, but right now for me, nothing. But Jason, you said you're working on Pantheon. Is it the MMO?
Rise of the Fallen? It's an MMO. Just PantheonMMO.com.
Cool, man.
Working on that, and then architecture course. They're both a lot of fun. Yeah, working on MMOs is a blast. Like I've gotten to work on a lot of MMOs, which has been really fun because it's just really different kinds of problems, and it makes everything else seem simple. It makes like all my other game dev problems seem easy when you have to deal with the scalability of an MMO and just the complexity. And somebody else had asked about making games. They were starting off and wanted to know if they should start with ECS, hybrid ECS, or pure ECS. The answer for that is all no. Like, don't use ECS if you're starting off. If you're just learning how to do game development, there's no benefit for you to start with ECS. It's there so that you can do things that you can't do without it. And everything that you want to do when you're starting off, you can do without ECS in a much easier to understand, simpler way that's not going to change out from under you in the next couple months. So I'd say don't start there at all. Don't even think about ECS yet. Get used to it, start building games, and then when when there's a situation where you're running into giant bottlenecks and there's not another solution, ECS is there, but that's a long ways out. Most developers aren't using it yet.
Yeah, no, I stopped making videos about it because it's just changing so fast.
Yeah, it's gonna keep changing. I expect it to change dramatically over 2022.
Yeah,
and just get simpler, more integrated, and yeah.
If I had the cycles, I would do it. I would cover it and just cover every iteration of it, but I just don't have the time to cover it.
I think most of us just don't get a payoff from it yet. Like we don't have a use case where there's not an easier solution that we can just drop in.
And Jason made a really good, I was actually looking for it right now. He made a good comment. If you look at ECS in and of itself, it's kind of like a framework, for writing code in Unity specifically. But, Jason mentioned, don't let your code be slotted into a framework rather than using a framework when and only when it adds value to your business rules. So in the case of ECS, if you just use ECS for the sake of using ECS, all your code is going to be specific to that framework. You're slotting it into make it work with Unity's dots or whatever they call it now. But, there are specific use cases, like in the case of that one example that they always show where there's like a bunch of soldiers running on a field and they're shooting arrows. Yeah, that specific use case, they needed something like ECS to manage all that. But generally speaking, you're not gonna need that just yet. At least not until it's either it's fleshed out, and I know they have plans to make it something that's completely integrated into Unity, such that like mono behaviors, you kind of don't even realize that you're using it.
Yep, that's what I would wait for too. Just wait until you need it, and you very specifically need it, or it gets super super simple.
Yeah. Someone in my chat says, is making an MMO in Unity using spatial easier than you think? I think he's making fun of that ad. Making games is easier than you think.
I've not seen that. I don't know how it is making them in spatial OS. I know making an MMO in general is harder than you think.
Yeah.
Like whatever you're anticipating the difficulties to be, expect them to be dramatically more complicated. Especially if you start comparing to any standard AAA MMO that's out there. Just getting all of that core functionality alone could take you years, like without having it look pretty and be fun. It's definitely
and all the content you have to add too.
Yeah, and then you have to build a world, right? You have to build a game, and then you have to ramp up and build a world. You have to build a bunch of tools around building that world, or else you're going to be building that world really slow. And it's definitely not the kind of thing that you want to take on as a solo or small team. I would say, like, build it. Especially if you've never built an MMO before. Make sure that you've done it before on a team with other people, or at least worked with people on one, so you can see all of the giant pitfalls that you're going to run into, because there's a ton of them. Yep. But it's also a blast, right?
if you're a masochist, you'll have a great time.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun because it's like anything else. Like, you get this big challenge, you make it work, and then you get to show it to people, and like a dozen people are all doing it at once together. It's even more fun. They're like, "Oh, we're all going to do this thing that you just did." That's a lot of fun. He said, well, I want to answer this question before we wrap up, because I thought it was funny. Do you have cases when developers made some simple games and go to early retirement because the games get enough money that they would never need to work again? Oh, the question disappeared. Flappy Bird.
I don't know, though. I think that guy screwed on that.
What's that?
I think that guy got screwed on that deal. He didn't. I don't know if he ever got all that money.
Oh, I thought he got the money from the ad revenue.
Oh, did he?
I think he got ad. I'm pretty sure he got ad revenue, and then he pulled it off because he was freaking out and overwhelmed by all the money. Which I guess, like, at the time, I was like, that's weird. But I guess, like, if you were in a situation, because I think he was in Vietnam or something. If you're in a situation where, you haven't had much money around forever and nobody around has, and suddenly, like, you're the richest person in the city, all because you made a little mobile game, I could see how it could kind of cause
I'd be like,
but I don't really know all the details.
Well, what about Notch? He made a lot of money.
He did too, but he didn't go into retirement, right? He made a lot of money, and he's like, I want to make all the games that I want to make now. And I think that would be the case for a lot of us. Like, we make a bunch of games. Yeah, Jason's saying that the Flappy Bird guy made 15 games. I thought he made like 35 games before that, or they'd made like a ton of them, and that one just happened to hit. But yeah, Notch, like he did what I think a lot of us would do if we just kind of got independently unlimited wealthy. Just started making the stuff that he wanted to make because he thought it was fun.
Yeah,
Just why I do this job, right? Because it's the stuff that I think is fun.
that's the way.
Yeah. Cool. Well, all right, man. This was a lot of fun. I think we should probably wrap it up and then do another one soon that's got a better bit rate and a lower resolution. So, and get together and do some more of these because they're a lot of fun, and being convince Jason to hop on or something.
Yeah, I'm sure he would.
Start answering all kinds of questions. Have a blast. Thanks again, everybody watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on both channels if you're not already subscribed channels, and hit the like so that a lot of people get to come back and see me answer all the questions in a giant delay with Charles.
Yeah, hit that like button. It's super important, and it's super appreciated that you guys showed up. And
Actually,
this was cool.
I should have told him to share it. I always forget. Sharing is the most important.
That's the new thing now, right? Sharing.
Yeah. Don't like it. Hit thumbs down and share it instead. Right. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Appreciate it. Be back. Like I said, I'm doing streams every Tuesday, and I think me and Charles will hop on a bunch more too. Hopefully.
I hope so.
Have a blast with these.
Definitely.